basically it relates with taking decisions regarding optimal utilization of resources. Basically, it so happens that since the resources are very limited, so we do not have every means to take care of all the needs. So scarcity is an issue. So that's why the allocation becomes an issue. So which are the things that are to be taken up first and which are the things that are taken up later. So those things are to be decided. It's a kind of priority allocation of resources. So economics tell us how to go ahead with this prioritizing the allocation of resources for different activities to make best possible allocation of the resources based on their requirement. So that is economics. So which actually gives us this idea. So scarcity is the issue. If there would not have been scarcity, probably economics would not have developed like this. It could have been something different, right? So so that way, in fact, as I told yesterday, that many environmental issues or many environmental attributes were considered to be free gifts of nature at certain point of time. But over a period of time, with urbanization, with industrialization, with needs of the people multiplying, things became different. So now many of the environmental resources are increasingly scarce, and that's why their availability becomes an issue. So to meet the needs of the people, so allocation becomes important. So that's where economics come into play a very important role. And in fact, there are a lot of instruments of economics which are being used in understanding environment. For example, we have the normal branch of economics to be microeconomics. Many tools of microeconomics will be used in understanding the issues of environment. For example, we talk about certain concepts like externality. I had some kind of initial discussion with you about externality. Then public goods. These are some of the concepts which are actually discussed not only in environmental economics, but also in microeconomics. Basically, these are the concepts of microeconomics and public finance, which are actually also discussed in the environmental economics. Similarly, as we told you about this allocation of resources, this allocation of resources cannot be a static thing. So you need it over a period of time. So how you are actually making use of the resources to produce goods and services, how you will be doing it for tomorrow. So those things are important. For those things, many a time we go for modeling kind of a thing. Optimal optimization technique is obviously one of them. Then sometimes we talk about dynamic optimization. So these are the things which are coming from mathematics, or you can say from quantitative economics as well. Similarly, statistics plays a very important role out there. Macroeconomics, the concept of national income, concept of GDP, concept of savings. So again, inflation, okay, rate of interest. So those things are directly coming from the national income, the macroeconomic domain. So that way, in fact, different domains have provided tools for studying the issues of environment in different capacities. So all these tools are being utilized by the environmental economics, and ultimately they try to arrive at certain kind of conclusion or analytical output out of this. So normally when you talk about environmental economics, we talk about environmental economics to be concerned with the impact of economy on environment. So in the economy, of course, we will be defining those things. So what economy is all about. So how environment is important to the economy, and so how best we can regulate the economic activities so that we can have a balance between environmental, economic, and social goals, because human beings are members of the society. So we need to have certain kind of overall goals. So it might be social goals, it might be cultural goals, it might be economic or environmental goals. So how can we make a balance between all these things? Because ultimately you'll find later on that all these activities will be having kind of trade-off kind of a thing. Same resources are being used for different types of activities. Obviously, there will be conflict in the use of these resources. So if you have to make a balance amongst all these things, obviously you need to find out ways how to achieve that. So that is one of the objectives in environmental economics also. So the essence of environmental problem is considered to be the economy, the behavior of producer, the behavior of the consumer, how they behave, and how in the process of behaving they have their impact on environmental quality or environmental resource itself. So these things are actually at the essence of environmental problem most of the time. If there would not have been human civilization, if there would not have been economic growth, there would not have been much of pressure on environment. Okay. So how do we define the economy? We define the economy, or maybe you can define it in many ways. For our convenience here, we are saying that economy will be consisting of the economic agents. Now, economic agents are nothing but human being only. So they are doing the economic activities. So they are the economic agents. So they comprise of the economy. Along with that, they might be building up or forming some kind of economic institutions in the form of maybe industry, in the form of farms, okay, in the form of government. So these are some kind of institutions they form, because government is also very important for carrying out economic activities, for bringing out policies, for ensuring certain economic things to be done. Okay, so even bringing in financial policy, monetary policy, all those things are responsibilities of the governments. And also the interlinkages between these economic agents and the institutions. One of the interlinkages is in the form of the markets. So in the market, actually, kind of this farm relationship between farms and human or people, so these things are realized out there. So that way, in fact, the economy will be comprising of all these things: economic agents, the economic institutions, and the interlinkage between the economic agents and the economic institutions. You see, so here we'll be talking a lot about the market. We'll be talking a lot about farm. So there are two terms here. One is farm, F-I-R-M, and another one is F-A-R-M, farm. So F-I-R-M, farm, basically means an individual unit. It's a kind of micro things, and many farms comprise or constitute together the farm, F-A-R-M, that is the industry actually. Farm, F-A-R-M, is the industry equivalent. So industry or the farm, F-A-R-M, so that might be a macro concept. The farm, F-I-R-M, individual farm, is a micro concept. Many farms means combine together to form an industry or form a bigger farm. So now how do you understand environment? So environment has been defined here as kind of surrounding our surrounding, in a sense, you can say. So the atmosphere, you can talk about the biosphere, you can talk about, and all the biotic and abiotic forms, in a sense, you can say all the flora, fauna, all those things will be part of the environment. Okay, so everything. So there might be gas, atmosphere, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, everything will be there. There will be life forms in the form of animal and in the form of kind of plants. So all those things will be there. Even non-living kind of items will be part of the environment. You see the rocks and all those things actually. So we consider them to be non-living, in a sense, abiotic. So all those things will also be part of the environment. So that way, in fact, what we can talk about environment is about all the natural resources, which might include the land cover, ecosystems, even different kind of life forms, energy and material resources, atmosphere, stratosphere, troposphere, all these things combined together, we can find the environment. And here, actually, in different parts of the environment, there might be different types of kind of interlinkages. So in kind of one unit of environment, if something happens, that might have an implication for the other unit of the environment itself. If something happens in, for example, in biosphere, probably, so that might have some kind of impact or maybe kind of implications for the other constituent of the overall atmosphere. As has been pointed out, one very big issue regarding economy environment interaction is the effect of human activity on the environment. Okay, so so there are so many things which we can talk about. You see, when you talk about the generation of electricity, for example, so we can do it with the help of so many things. For example, we can talk about fossil fuels, and in fact, fossil fuels are the most important source of energy for human. So if we use a fossil fuel, there are a lot of implications out there. So one thing is that fossil fuels are kind of, it's a non-renewable energy form, energy source. Now this non-renewable energy source, so these are actually, this haven't formed within a day or within a few years of time. It has happened, it has formed, or it has been a kind of, it has taken its shape over centuries together. Okay, So when we make use of the fossil fuel to generate electricity, for example, first of all, we'll be depleting them. So since non-renewable resources are non-renewable, we cannot renew them, regenerate them within a meaningful period of time. So obviously, once we use them, we are depleting the stock of the resource. That is one obvious impact. The second impact is that so whenever some form of fossil fuels are being used to release generate electricity, for example, if we are burning coal, for example, so they might be generating. So definitely they'll be generating electricity, no doubt. But at the same time, they will also be generating some kind of unfavorable items out there. For example, carbon dioxide might be generated, sulfur dioxide might be generated. So all these things might not be having kind of favorable impact on the overall well-being of the people, because this might contribute towards air pollution, and air pollution will not be contributing towards welfare of. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Now we can hear you.
Yeah. Got disconnected in between.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So what I was saying is that the human intervention in the form of economic agents, uh, okay, so might have influences or maybe consequences for the environment as a whole. So that might be direct intervention in the form of, as we have pointed out, for example, generation of electricity by way of using fossil fuel. In some other cases, it may not be direct intervention as such, but there it might be by way of indirect intervention by framing certain policies. For example, if we talk about this agricultural support policy in recent years, in fact, in recent months, so you all are aware about the farm bills, and because kind of protest is going on, it's a kind of huge protest going on, and for over maybe over 1 month actually, so more than 40 days probably. So this protest is going on. So probably you'll be knowing about the kind of agricultural support that the government sometimes provides to the farm sector. Now, in case of India, if you look at, so fertilizer subsidy is a very important component of subsidy component. So it is one of the top three subsidy top three sectors, or maybe top three activities which attract the maximum amount of subsidies of the government. Now here, when we talk about agricultural support policy, for example, so if we promote the use of more chemical fertilizers, then obviously from the point of view of production of agricultural commodities, this kind of subsidized fertilizer will be welcome, because we need more agricultural output. And for that, fertilizer that to a subsidized rate is very much welcome. But at the same time, if we look at the in the long run, what happens, that might have some our green revolution, traditional green revolution areas, for example, Punjab and Haryana, and also other places. It has been pointed out that because of the kind of advantages these places have in the form of certain policies of the government, so what is happening, some of the resources are being more intensively utilized. For example, water resource, as a result of which in many places in those regions, actually groundwater reserve has been adversely affected. So that has happened because not only because of fertilizer subsidy or fertilizer support that the government is extending, but also because of support in the form of electricity, which is actually provided at subsidized rate, and also because of the procurement policy of the government sometimes. Now, what happens, I'm just citing one example. Of course, it's a controversial thing right now because Farm Bill is being protested like anything. If I bring up again another issue, and probably many of many people may not like as well, but I'm just telling you one truth, which has been actually discussed in many fora already. Very recently, Ramesh Chand in the last month, I believe in December, actually around 17th or 18th of December. Ramesh Chand, he is an actually agricultural scientist. He worked in Indian Council of Agricultural Research in Pusa. He is also part of Niti Aayog. So he wrote one article in the Hindu. So the basic argument of the article is that the farmers in Punjab should think about producing something else. They should okay come out of this wheat rice cropping pattern. Why he's saying so is actually not very difficult to understand. One thing is that you see Punjab, Haryana, this belt is not traditionally a rice eating or rice consuming region. Basically, they are wheat consuming region, and that's why traditionally they were producing wheat. But with the support the government provided actually, which came in the form of green revolution at certain point of time. So what happened? The procurement of wheat and rice that became a regular phenomenon in those parts of the country. Now, since procurement gives them an assured price, so they started producing rice along with wheat, okay, as a part of green revolution. Now, rice is a different kind of a crop. Wheat is a different kind of crop because wheat is a rabi crop which doesn't require a lot of water, but rice requires a lot of water. So that's why traditionally in those places where more rainfall is there and the water reserve is relatively better, so those places actually normally have rice production more. For example, West Bengal, that produces the maximum amount of paddy in the country. So, so that was the case. But since the support system was there, the farmers used to get kind of a remunerative price on the produce. I'm talking about paddy or rice. So as a result of that, they kept on producing rice in those states. But ultimately, since rice requires a lot of watering, it's a kind of flooding method of irrigation, you can say so. So you require a lot of water. So you have to rely more on groundwater resources. And as a result of that, groundwater reserves in these states have been adversely affected. So this is one example. So how policies of the government can influence the environment. Otherwise, you can have direct intervention or interaction between the economic activity and the environmental quality. So the economy operates from inside the environmental system. Environment is a bigger system in which the economy works, with conditions in the two systems being simultaneously determined. Okay, so there are different conditions in which they'll be working, but both this okay, all these conditions will be simultaneously determined. We can find out the links between the two systems, how it works. So how there are different kind of interventions and interactions between these two systems. Would like to have a look into this too. If you look at this diagram, you'll be able to understand what economy and environment interaction is all about. So here, what we are trying to do is to show economy in the form of two sectors. One is the production sector. So this is also known as the farm sector, FARM sector. And the other one is the consumption sector, which is also known as the household sector. Now, normally in the farm sector, production activities takes place. So it might be agricultural production, it might be industrial production, it might be production of services, whatever that may be. So these are produced out there. And the consumption sector mostly consumes the items produced by the production sector. Or in a sense, you can say the household sector. Consumption sector is also known as the household sector. So it makes use of the goods and services produced by the farm sector. In fact, in return, what happened, this household sector also provides, supplies some kind of inputs to the production sector. For example, labor.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
So your screen is not visible. Right.
Yes, sir. Screen or not? Yeah.
Screen is not visible.
Yes, sir.
So let me try once again. The previous screen was visible.
Yeah, before you got disconnected, it was visible, sir.
Okay, okay. Let me try. Let me try. Is it visible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
It's coming. Yeah, if you look at, you will find here two things. One is production and the other one is consumption. I'm just going back again. So in case of production, we are saying that this is the farm sector, and consumption is also known as the household sector. And they will be having their interaction. Production sector is engaged in production of goods and services. Consumption sector mostly makes use of the goods and services used in the production sector. So from production sector supplies goods and services to consumption sector. But at the same time, production sector also requires the contribution of consumption sector because it's the household sector. For production of goods and services, so production requires a lot of factors. One of the factors will be the laborer. Now the labor will be supplied by the household sector. So consumption sector will give you the factors of production, maybe in the form of laborer, mostly I'm talking about. So additional factors might also be coming from the consumption sector. Now, in the process of production, what happens once things are produced? So after that, some kind of recycling also happens in the production sector. So R1 represents some form of recycling of the produced goods and services. Similarly, in the consumption sector, also there is a possibility of some kind of recycling. So in the economic system, we have these things actually, production and consumption, two sectors which are considered to be the economy and also the production of goods and services taking place out here. Now, how the production of goods and services happen out there? So here, what we can say is that you see the environment is represented in the form of these circles actually, these three circles, blue, red, and green circle. Along with that, there is another one which is known as global life support services. So obviously, you will be getting four things out here: E1, E2, E3, and E4. E4 is towards the lower half actually, lower portion you will find. So all encompassing kind of a thing, global life support services. So these four components will constitute the environment. Now, if you look at, so what we find here is, you see, for production, you require a lot of resources. As I told you, so laborers are required, but apart from that, you will be requiring raw materials, you'll be requiring energy. And in fact, we talk about that. The growth is associated with kind of availability of energy. If you want to have higher level of growth, you'll be requiring more and more of energy. So that energy is to be provided. So who will be so from where you will be collecting the energy? You'll be you know about that sources of energy. So it might be kind of fossil fuels. It might be kind of renewable energy. So these type of things. Now, in case of renewable energy, if you look at, so the percentage of total energy requirement that is met by renewable resources, that is much lesser. I believe globally more than 90% of the requirement of energy, so that still comes from the fossil fuels, so in the form of oil, coal, and natural gas. Okay, so that type of a thing. So environment as a kind of supplier of raw materials and energy, so that is the first responsibility of the environment for any kind of economic activities. Okay, the first role of environment towards economic activities will be in the form of supplier of energy and raw materials. In the second case, what we can find is, you see, environment also acts as the waste sink. Waste sink means whatever waste will be generated in the farm sector or maybe in the household sector, so that will mostly go back to the environment only. Okay, wastages, so which are mostly the byproduct in the form of in production process, and also in the consumption sector, there are a lot of things so which might be generated. So this might be dumped back into the environment. So environment acts as the waste sink. But the thing is that in some of the cases we find this waste might be a kind of, then there are different forms of waste. One form of waste which is known as the conservative waste or maybe cumulative waste. So this is the term which is actually mentioned here. So waste might be also in the form of pollution or pollutant, you can say so. So it might contribute towards kind of reduction of overall welfare of the society. So pollution might happen out of this. Okay. So from production sector as well as consumption sector, there will be waste generated. Now some of the waste might be processed by the system itself. For example, if we talk about one industry which produces certain commodities, at the same time, as a byproduct, some waste are also generated, then what will happen? So the waste might be dumped into the environment. Yesterday, I gave the example of paper industry. I also gave the example of a river where the waste might be dumped. That is the normal practice, actually. So we do not follow a scientific method of managing the waste generated. So we dump it into the environment. Now, if we dump it into the river, okay, so it might so happen that the some of the waste might be biologically processed. It might be organic waste kind of a thing, biologically processed, chemically processed. So the negative impact of the waste might be reduced considerably. That might happen soon. So of course, it depends. So how much of water is there, how much of waste is dumped into the river, the relative amount of relativeness of the waste to the amount of water available, to the oxygen available in the water. So those things will be responsible, will be able to tell us how much of the waste will be actually processed and will be converted into harmless substances. Okay, so there is, of course, the environment has some kind of capability. We can say that assimilative capacity or capability. So this is a kind of limit. So once that threshold is crossed, probably kind of negative impact of this waste, which is dumped into the environment, will be much more visible. Okay, so that way, in fact, environment might be having some kind of assimilative capacity. And if the waste dumped into the environment is within the limit of that assimilative capacity, so the negative impact of the environment might not be visible or might not be experienced that much. But once that assimilative capacity is crossed, then the negative impact of the waste dumped into the environment will be clearly visible. It will add to the discomfort of the people at large, or the society at large. So some of as has been pointed out, some of the waste will be processed by biological process or maybe by chemical process. But all the waste or inputs to the environment cannot be processed naturally and converted into less harmful or harmless substances. Okay, so these substances which cannot be naturally processed and converted into harmless substances might be termed as cumulative or conservative pollutants. So these might include a lot of materials. For example, you can talk about lead, you can talk about cadmium. So these are actually natural things which are coming from the environment. But other things are also there. People may produce certain products. For example, always we talk about the plastic products, okay? So all these products, PCBs, for example, DDTs, for example, so all those things probably, so whatever that may be, many of these things may not be chemically processed or maybe are naturally processed by the environment itself. So if it is dumped into the environment, it will be accumulated, or maybe it might accumulate over a period of time. So if you have to talk about the waste which is not processed biologically or chemically, probably that will accumulate over a period of time. So we have certain things out there. For example, we are talking about metals, DDTs, PCBs, something like this. So two forms of pollutants. One is the degradable pollutants. In the case of degradable pollutants, what happened? Some of the waste or pollutants will be processed. So how much of total pollutant is there? The stock of the pollutant at any point of time. So that is given by a formula. For example, here we are talking about subtraction of the assimilated amount from the flow of pollutants. Okay, FT minus AT is considered to be the stock of kind of degradable pollutants at a particular time point, suppose ST. But for cumulative pollutants, so it's not like that. So you just add it up over a period of time. So here we are saying that from point T naught time point till T star, so there will be accumulation of the flow of pollutants. So it's a accumulation of pollutants over a period of time. But of course, one more thing we have to keep in mind here is that, so although we are saying that there will be accumulation of waste or pollutants over a period of time, if we go back to the example of waste being dumped into the river, for example, so it might so happen that some of the pollutants might be transported. Some transportation might happen. It's not that at a particular point, at a particular location, this much of accumulation of pollutant will be available. It may not happen so. some of the pollutants might be transported also. So it's not strictly the second equation that we are talking about that will be applicable, but some lesser amount of that might be there because transportation also will play an important role out there. Going back to the diagram, so what we have found so far is that environment acts as the supplier of energy and raw materials to the economic system. It also acts as the waste sink for the economy as a whole, because it dumps, it actually absorbs, it tries to take all the pollutants or the waste which is the result which is actually produced as a result of economic activities. And the third rule of the environment to the system or maybe humankind or society at large will be in the form of providing amenity values. Now, when you say amenity, actually we are talking about a lot of things here. Amenity might be recreational values, it might be cultural values, it might be spiritual values, everything. This is all the environmental resources. You think about forest, you think about wetland, you think about river, you think about sea, mountain, all those things. Actually, they provide some kind of amenity values to mankind. Okay, for some, actually, for nature lover, it's pure joy. For some communities, it might be spiritual values, which is actually provided by the environment. So some others, it might be cultural values. So different forms of amenity values are provided by the environmental resources. We can say that these are environmental assets in a sense. For example, air, for example, air quality, water quality, these things might be kind of assets. Okay. Now, the thing is that, so when we talk about amenities, we are talking about values as such. Now, in economics, when you talk about value, I mentioned about this yesterday in the class, that we talk about a new classical definition of value. So where actually we consider value to be dependent on the overall welfare of the society at large. Now, overall welfare is in the form of well-being, we say, and well-being can be expressed in the form of satisfaction that the people derive from different activities or maybe different goods and services. Okay, so that way it goes. So it includes so many things, individual and also societal welfare, as I said, is actually considered to be a combination of individual welfares. Okay, so it is considered to be summation of some total of individual well-being. So if an individual gets some satisfaction by way of using some of the resources and goods and services, okay, so that satisfaction, if we can measure, there are ways of actually measuring it. So then, okay, so summing up the individual utilities or satisfaction of all the people in the society, we can find out the overall societal welfare. So that way, in fact, we can find out whether welfare has gone up, whether welfare has gone down. So those things we can find out. So when we talk about amenity values, we talk about okay, the kind of welfare which might be generated out of amenity values of the resources, basically environmental resources we talk about. I'm just showing you one thing out here. Yes, here, as I have pointed out, social welfare is considered to be the sum total of individual welfare, and this individual welfare is in the form of individual well-being, and individual well-being can be expressed in terms of satisfaction derived by people from combination of different goods or assets. Now here, if we try to express this individual welfare UJ is nothing but individual welfare of an individual J. So we can consider this to be coming from different goods and services or maybe environmental assets. You see, at a particular point of time, an individual might be using a lot of things. I might be using the computer, I might be having food, I might be having clothing, I might be having a book. So all those things might be there. At the same time, I might be deriving pleasure by looking at the hillock in the campus, or maybe by going to the lake and seeing the beauty of the swans swimming in the lakes. So those things are there. Also, I might get pleasure out of the migratory birds playing in the water bodies in the campus. Something like that. So that way, in fact, what we can say is that my individual utility or satisfaction depends on a number of things. And if we can specify this number of things, for example, here we are saying there are two sets of vectors or variables, you can say. So one set of variable is excess. All this excess might be goods and services, which might be produced with the help of environmental resources. Okay, so for example, we can talk about kind of electricity. Electricity might be generated from fossil fuels, or maybe from hydro power, actually, whatever that may be. So this might be collected from the environment only. So kind of other items which might be produced. For example, if you're talking about cement, cement is again produced from limestone, which is collected again from the environment. Food I am talking about, food will be again produced in the environment only. So that way, in fact, the goods and services will be one component which will be contributing towards my welfare level or my satisfaction level. At the same time, another set of vectors might be in the form of environmental assets. We are saying Qs to be environmental assets. What are those? Qs might be kind of your hillock, Q might be your lakes, Q might be your good air quality, Q might be your water quality, whatever that may be. So in essence, what we are saying here is that this utility is dependent on a number of, okay, so consumption of a lot of things. It might be goods and services, it might be environmental assets. Now here, if we assume that X1 is, suppose, the consumption of kind of services by way of driving my vehicle in the campus, for example. I'm giving the example of the campus because you know about the campus. Now here, what will I'll derive some pleasure by driving my vehicle. That's okay. But at the same time, if I assume that Q1 is nothing but what air quality, then what will happen? You see, when I drive my vehicle, I will be consuming petrol at the same time. And at the same time, I'll also be releasing some kind of gas in the air. So that will reduce the quality of Q1. Q1, if I assume that it's air quality, so Q1 will be adversely affected. So what will happen out here is that you see, so we'll be finding some kind of what will you say, conflicting use or conflicting behavior of different variables out here in the utility function. So if we assume Q1 to be air quality and X1 to be consumption of car owning services, then what will happen? I will be deriving positive utility. So whenever I'll be driving more of the vehicle, then I'll be getting more of utility, more of satisfaction. That is okay. So in a sense, we can say that del uj with reference to del X1 will be positive. But at the same time, what will happen when we drive the vehicle, then the air quality will be adversely affected. That means the change in air quality will be negative. So change in air quality del Q1 with reference to change in driving of the vehicle, consumption of driving the vehicle. So X1, del Q1, del X1 will be negative. Okay. Now overall, if I have to find out the reduction in utility or maybe change in utility, so I have to take these two things into account. For example, del Uj by del Q1 into del Q1 by del X1. What will be the change in the utility as a result of, okay, driving the vehicle? Because in one way it is positive, the other way it might be negative, because the environmental air quality will be degraded. So air quality degradation will also contribute towards my satisfaction level. So whatever, in fact, the net effect out of this will not be very clear. It will be ambiguous, depending upon which of these two effects will be more stronger. Then ultimate impact on the environment out of these two will be okay. Means in fact we can define that. So whether it is positive or negative, it will depend upon the relative strength of these two impacts. So that way, what we can say is that, so although individual utility depends on a number of goods and services and the environmental assets, but the environment has some kind of conflicting use, and there are trade-off between different uses of the environmental resources. You can find out a number of examples regarding this. For example, I am giving a few examples out here in the screen. You will be finding, we are saying the same mountain region can be used for extracting minerals. It can also be used as an amenity provider. Now, if we use more of minerals, if we extract more of minerals out of that, maybe amenity values of the mountain will be reduced. Many a time we talk about those things, open coal mining and everything. So environment effect is adversely affected because of open coal mining and other things. So the same resource might be providing different types of utilities or benefits. Now, depending upon how we use it, the other use will be influenced. Using a river as a waste disposal unit, as has been mentioned many a time, and provider of amenity. The sunset in the river Brahmaputra, for example. Okay, so in sunset in the sea in Puri, for example. So these things are certain kind of amenities. Now, if the river or maybe the sea is used as a waste disposal unit, obviously people will not get some kind of amenities out of the river or maybe the sea, beach, the way they used to get it. So the conflicting use is there. If you use more of this for one particular work, the less it is available for other work. Amenity values will be reduced if we use the river as a waste disposal unit. Similarly, felling a forest for timber and electricity generating capacity of a dam. So if we go for kind of felling of forest for timber, then obviously there will be some economic value to that, because we'll be getting some revenues out of that by selling the timber product in the market. But at the same time, if there is a dam which is generating electricity from the forest actually, or nearby forest, then by way of felling forest, we are actually eroding the capacity of the dam for generation of electricity, because the forest will be important out here for the dam. Similarly, we can talk about this wetland. Wetland can be used for irrigating agricultural land. At the same time, it can also be used for aesthetic qualities. You can get amenity values out there. If we use more of this for agricultural activities, then amenity values will be affected more. And if we use it more for aesthetic qualities, then obviously we cannot use more of it for agricultural activities. So that way, in fact, even in the case of waste sink that we are talking about, if we use the environment more as a waste sink, it may reduce the ability to supply the basic life support. So that has happened with, I think we can say, greenhouse gas. Basically, we are talking about ozone hole depletion and other things. We are talking about this global warming kind of a thing. So human activities have some direct bearing on these, and as a result of that, global warming might be happening out there. So that might not be good. So one activity might have some other dimensions. So it can provide you multiple support or multiple facilities, multiple opportunities, which may not be coming forth if we go for more of one kind of work or activities. So what you can find or infer from here is that environment is a scarce resource. Environment is a scarce resource. At the same time, there will be many conflicting demands placed on it. So you may require the environment for dumping the waste. You may require the environment for providing raw materials and energy sources. At the same time, you also require the environment for your amenity values. You require it for your basic life support services. Okay, so all those things are equally important out there. Now, when you talk about scarcity, there are two types of scarcity. One is the relative scarcity and the other one is the absolute scarcity. When you talk about relative scarcity, basically we are saying the demand for the resource is more compared to what it is. So kind of scarcity is there, obviously. So it's a relative scarcity. So that the problem of relative scarcity can be overcome by way of kind of proper set of prices actually. If we set prices for scarcity values, then obviously, so if there is more demand for a particular service, the prices of the service might be higher. If the price is relatively higher, demand might be relatively lesser. So that will take care of actually. So we normally see that, no? So whenever the price of a commodity is higher, the law of demand says that the demand for the commodity will be lower. So if the price system is properly set up or maybe properly fixed, so that price system will take care of this relative scarcity. Now, in so far as absolute scarcity is concerned, that happens because at the same time, there are simultaneous demands, and at the same time, what happens? You see, the growth is a major factor or major source for this absolute scarcity. Economic growth, basically. So we require a lot of things happening at the same time. For that, you require a lot of resources, energy. At the same time, when you use more of energy, more of resources, at the same time, more waste will be generated. So those things will reduce the capability of the environment like anything. It's an absolute scarcity. So that is why we often talk about this sustainable development kind of a thing, because the resources available will be limited. We cannot have enormous amount of facilities or maybe kind of output coming out of these limited facilities or limited resources. So that is one big issue, so which can be tackled with different types of policies. Obviously, Economics has a role to play out here. The price system has a role to play there. Normally, it is left to the market system to operate properly. But many a time, markets are not the best in a sense. So market might be successful, market might be a failure. So, so we need to study the behavior of the market, how it copes up with different situations out there, when it can become a successful market and when it can fail and it cannot provide you the proper signal in the form of price, and ultimately allocation doesn't happen properly. So those things we'll be looking into slowly and slowly. And the last thing, as I talked about, was this global life support services. If you go back in the diagram, you will find this E4 is the global life support services, which include a number of things. We talk about this atmospheric thing. We talk about this water cycle, hydrological cycle. So all those things are maintained by this, even atmospheric pressure and other things. In the case of atmosphere, you know it very well. So when you talk about our atmosphere, it comprises of so many gases. Nitrogen may be there around 78%, oxygen might be there 21%. The rest will be in the form of argon, carbon dioxide, helium, so many other things are there. Now, the degree of variability between this combination or composition of different gases in the atmosphere, that is extremely limited, extremely small. So if it varies too much, for example, if carbon dioxide becomes very high, then obviously kind of lives will not be sustained in the earth, something like that. So the degree of variability between different kind of forms of gases, or maybe, so that will be much limited out here. Okay, so that is maintained by the environment itself. We are not doing anything into that. Rather, we are actually trying to erode the capacity of the environment to maintain a balance about these things. Okay. This is one, maintenance of an atmospheric composition suitable for life, that has been done. Similarly, maintenance of temperature and climate. You see, the global mean temperature as of now is around 15 degrees centigrade. Okay, so it has, over a period of time, it has come up. And this naturally occurring greenhouse gas effect, that is maintaining this temperature and the climate. So if we do something to alter that by way of human interaction, obviously that will have an impact with the temperature and climate, which will not be good for sustaining kind of life in the earth. Similarly, we have this recycling of water and nutrients happening automatically, and that is maintained by the ecosystem only in the form of hydrological cycle, in the form of carbon cycle and oxygen cycle. So all these things are done automatically by the environment itself. So in this sense, if we look at, we find a lot of interaction between the economic system and the environmental system. So if there are environment, as we can see, is a scarce commodity, and we do not have much option to bring in more of these things. What we can do probably is to restrict ourselves to such activities so that the environment is not impacted that much. So that's why we talk about this sustainable lifestyle, sustainable production, sustainable, so many sustainability things we talk about. Basically, sustainability here talks about the way we can conduct ourselves so that the resources that are available today will also be equally available for tomorrow. Of course, that's a very difficult thing to do, because the needs of the people over a period of time keep on changing. And for meeting the needs of the people, the resources have also to be used accordingly. Now, since the resources are limited, maintaining the same amount of resources over a period of time might be extremely difficult. So we are trying by way of technological intervention, by way of price mechanism, to ensure that some kind of sustainability is ensured in the system. But it's not very easy thing to do. It takes a lot of time actually, and in fact, it's not very practicable also. But even then, and also there are a lot of complexities. We'll try to have a look into those things as well. So why it is very complex. But at the same time, the environment is such a subject or such a topic in which, so global environment, if you look into, so you will find that an individual's contribution will not be enough. Rather, the contribution of each and every nation will be actually important. And that is why there will be requirement of understanding between different nations regarding the strategies to tackle the problems of environment. So that's why we find a lot of protocols being, or a lot of discussion being held, convention being held, and in fact decisions taken by different countries in the world. We know about this Kyoto Protocol, Arch Summit, Montreal Protocol, even we talk about this Paris Agreement. All those things are a result of the growing realization of the people that economic activities have very negative impact or maybe serious impact on the quality of the environment, which itself threatens actually the very existence of human civilization. That realization has come, but ultimately kind of implementation of this is a matter of concern actually. So we have to find out so how we can go ahead with this. Actually, along with this, we were supposed to go through the two laws of thermodynamics. First law, materials balance principle, and the other one is the entropy law. Basically, so we try to say that there is a kind of physical law which might govern this economy environment relationship. So to show that, but I'll not be in a position to complete this today. So that's why maybe I can take it up tomorrow. As of now, if you have any question on this, I'll be happy to interact with you. Do you have any question?
No, sir.
Yes, Zives has sent one message. Will you have any plans on sharing these slides? Yes, definitely. I have planned to share these slides. Just be in the class, try to understand. So after the class is over, I'll be sending you the slides. Already a group is formed, you know about that. So I'll be sending by way of email. Is that fine with you, Zives?
Yes, sir, we'll be fine with it.
Okay. Any other question? You see, already we are stressed a lot, no? It's very difficult for all of us to conduct a class online, right? I'm not talking about technology. I'm talking about the experience of conducting classes online. Technologically, probably it's fine, but okay, so many students have difficulties there also. We understand that. So what I mean to say is that you can always interact if you have any issue. Okay, always try to interact and raise so that it doesn't become too monotonous. Okay, so we have to cope up with this situation that all of us know it. It's a